Shalom from Jerusalem. My name is Aaron. I'm the director of Canada House, and here we are on the eve of Hanukka. Hanukka is a fantastic festival. It's also a challenge to many of us. Now, most of us, you and I, we would like to say that our life and our worldview is based solely on the Bible. And that's great. And what challenges us about Hanukka is it's a festival that's not in the Bible. Now, before you complain, you'll say, "But Aaron, it is in the Bible. It's in John chapter 10, verse 22." This is true. And John chapter 10, verse 22 says that it was the feast of dedication, and Jesus was in Jerusalem, and it was winter. And that's it. That's all the information you get. There is a festival of dedication. We understand it is a winter festival, and Jesus is attending. But there's no other information about it, not in the Hebrew Bible and not in the New Testament. So how do you know anything about the modern festival of Hanukka? And so the world has actually changed the meaning and celebration of Hanukka. The Hanukka that we actually celebrate today, okay, is celebrated quite differently from the way it was celebrated in its inception. Many festivals are like that. They're often the culture takes the festival and uses it. So now you have donuts, which we all eat, and latkes and sort of very oily foods, of which none of that is in the story. And you have lots of Hanukkah presents and really bad traffic. And of course, none of that's in the original story. But the world does that to all of the festivals. Okay, we've changed Easter, we've changed Christmas, we've changed most of the festivals of the Christian world, much to our chagrin and shame. But the good thing about Hanukkah is it challenges our worldview that this book, okay, stands alone. It's the Bible; it does stand alone, but it's got a base as well. If you want to know the real story of Hanukkah, you're going to need to pick up a good copy of the Apocrypha. And Apocrypha just means hidden writings. They have been dismissed by majority of the Protestant world, not the Catholics or the Orthodox traditions, and some older traditional churches like Anglicans. They also read these texts. It's in the Apocrypha that you're going to find the history about what the festival of the Maccabees really is, and these extra biblical sources, or the intertestamental period writings, what we call the Apocrypha, we're actually going to find that these become the basis of the New Testament. Explain yourself, Aaron. Good question. So, at its core, and quite applicable to our current situation, Hanukkah is a war festival. Now, Israel is currently engaged in a very tough war against the enemy Hamas and everything that represents. And that war, which is being fought here in the Gaza Strip, is being exported around the world, and we've seen the enemy, and here I'm talking about our spiritual enemy, the enemy of anti-Semitism, and the enemy of God Himself, rise up, and people protesting, and they don't even know the reasons why. But the scenario of Hanukkah is the festival of Hanukkah, and the scenario of the Maccabees is a war between the Greeks and the Jewish people, and it was a clash of culture, and it was a clash of gods, where the Greeks were attempting to impose their culture on the Jewish people, and there was a reaction. And the reaction was violent, or parts of it were violent, and there were battles and heroes and all kinds of really cool, interesting things. Would make probably a really great movie. Read all about it in the actual books of the Maccabees, of which there are 4. Now, the second book and the fourth book really talk a bit about the theology that is going around the physical nature of the conflict. There's a spiritual side of this. And so it's in this book that we're beginning to see the basis, okay, of what we see in the New Testament. You see, in the Torah, if you're obedient, and God asks us to be obedient, he calls on Israel and the Gentiles to be obedient to his word. If you're obedient, you get a blessing. There's a blessing that is poured out on the righteous. There's a blessing that is poured out upon the good people. There's a blessing that is poured out upon those who love the Lord, love his Torah, and seek to do his will. That's great. But in reality, sometimes the good people who are doing the Torah and are being obedient aren't receiving a blessing. Instead, they're suffering. And that's what was happening during the Maccabean period, during the time of Hanukka, of the Maccabees, where Jewish people were trying to be obedient to God. They weren't going to surrender to the culture. They weren't going to obey the Greek world and their gods. And they were suffering for it. They were being martyred. They were being persecuted. And they were having to deal with that theologically. They were being obedient, but not getting a blessing. And so suffering becomes very important in the late Second Temple period. And it was suffering and perseverance and endurance which would give you the crown of victory, which is exactly what you see in the writings of Paul. It's the basis of the New Testament. Now, the Maccabees eventually win their war, because sometimes evil actually has to be confronted with violence. Now, it's a tough thing to say, and people may disagree with me, and that's fine. But when you get to the book of Revelation, the final book that closes the Bible, then God deals with evil, and he doesn't deal with it as a lamb. He deals with it as a lion. Now, I'm not advocating let's all go out to war and have lots of fun. No, it's suffering is horrible. You should always pray for peace. But we also need to acknowledge at exactly the same time that sometimes evil is confronted, and it is confronted, unfortunately, with violence. In the case of the Maccabees, they succeed. This little small group of people take on the superpower of the day, the Greek Empire, the Seleucid Empire, and they win. And of course, that's a miracle. And so they need to have a celebration. So they add the celebration to their calendar. And here we have the biblical precedents to be able to actually do that. You are allowed to add festivals to your calendar that are not in your Bible. And there's a heavy use of light around this celebration. In the New Testament, it's called the Feast of Dedication, which is the word Hanukka, that we're dedicating the temple back to the Lord. It had been profaned by idolatry. But as in Josephus, it's called the Festival of Light. And what lights are we talking about? They even invented a new motif. Okay, so like at Christmas, we came up with a tree. At Hanukkah, they came up with a whole new motif, the Hanukka, the 8-branched candelabra. Normally, it's supposed to have 7, and one extra one for the servant candle. And light is a part of this festival. And light is a very strong biblical motif. It was there at creation, and the light always signifies the presence of the Lord. And so you light candles and you contemplate the light of God, the blessings of God, suffering, perseverance, endurance, ultimate victory. These are all great things. And light, even in the prophets, becomes synonymous with salvation. The Lord is my light and my salvation. So whom shall I fear? Now, a tradition that's been attached to this is the myth of the magical oil. And unfortunately, a lot of people really, really, really want to look for signs. At the time of Jesus, he was challenged by the Sanhedrin, and he said, look, you're always looking for signs. You're always looking for miracles. And in the Christian world, we're often doing that too. Please tell me a sign. Please show me a miracle. Otherwise, my faith isn't secure. And that's really sad. Is not creation a miracle? Is not Jesus a miracle? Is not the state of Israel a miracle? And is that not enough? Why do we keep looking for more signs? So as we celebrate Hanukkah, let's celebrate victory over evil, victory over a false pagan culture, which we're seeing today. Let's contemplate the light of creation and salvation, and then share it. Right? Hanukkah is a community event. It's a family event. It's not just something personal. We need to apply it personally, yes, but apply it personally within our families, within our communities, within our churches, and then out into the world. So let's join with our Jewish brothers and sisters, celebrate this fantastic festival, and share it with the world. Brothers and sisters, endure, don't give up, and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Shalom from Jerusalem.